Welcome back to the Get House podcast, brought to you by GetHouseSurvey.ie. I'm your host, Noel, and in this episode, we chat about the house buying journey and answer some of your most pressing questions which you've sent us. Our guests are the trusted partners from the First Time Buyers Ireland Facebook group. We've got Chrissy Hughes, owner of the group, Cian Carolan from FinanceOne, Suzanne Parker from ParkerLaw, and Nick McGowan from Lion.ie. If you've listened to other episodes, you'll know I'm a big fan of the First Time Buyers Ireland group, and so I'm really excited to get the trusted partners onto this podcast. Together, this group knows more about the challenges you face as buyers than anybody else, so you're guaranteed to learn a few things which will help you through the process and get you into your home. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Okay, so we're here with Chrissy Hughes from First Time Buyers Ireland, Cian Carolan from FinanceOne, Suzanne Parker from ParkerLaw, and Nick McGowan from Lion.ie. And as we said in the intro, we're going to chat about some of the challenges the first-time buyers face in the market today. We all work with first-time buyers every day in our job. So we're going to go through the group, ask some of your most common questions that we've received, and hopefully give you some helpful tips along the way. So, Chrissy, you're the lucky person. We're going to start with you. Why don't you just give us a quick intro about yourself and about the First Time Buyers Ireland Facebook group?
Yeah, so I'm Chrissy. I went through the buying process back in 2016. My house sale took a year, so it was a very long, drawn-out process, and I struggled to find other people to communicate with and ask questions. And that led me to start the First Time Buyers Ireland group so that other people going through the process had somewhere to go to ask those questions. I was one of the first people in my friend group and family to go through the process in this generation. So yeah, there was nowhere for me to ask questions. So that's why I set up the group.
Okay, so last time you were a guest, you didn't mention that piece, that you were the first person in your generation in the family to go through it. So you didn't even have any cousins or anybody like that to look through for advice. Okay,
no.
And when you started the group, how did that kick off, and who were the first people you got into the group?
I don't actually know how the first people joined. I think I used to post under articles. You know, the Love in Dublin would put up like something about houses or Irish Times or something, and I'd post a link to the group, and some people would join it from that. But it was mainly me just asking questions to like 5 people at the start. I went through it a few months ago just to look at my first questions to basically myself, and it's very funny to go back and look at it back then compared to now, because it just kind of, I think word of mouth is the reason it got bigger and bigger. Because a lot of the people in the membership questions say that someone recommended it to them because they found it helpful in their process.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I even notice from when I joined the group, it must be nearly 2 years ago now at this stage, I think. But I even noticed the questions I was thrown into the group and to what I know now. If I was back to some of those questions, I'd probably feel a bit silly looking at them. I've learned a huge amount from the group and seeing everybody else's questions and answers. And it seems to me like no matter what the question is, no matter what challenge somebody is facing, there always seems to be somebody else who's gone through it, or somebody else who knows somebody who's gone through it and can point out a bit of advice.
Yeah, and that's the kind of nice thing. Like, even if you don't want to post, you're too nervous to post a question, you can search in the group and someone's most likely asked the question before. And then there's funny posts, like someone a few weeks ago posted about how it takes as long to buy a couch as it does a house in Ireland. And the comments under that just made me laugh so much. Like, it's just nice to see like that community spirit where people just joke together, and you know, it does take ages to buy a couch.
Yeah, I did see that one, and I think that's now I suppose it's a good problem people have in the group when they're about to close on maybe a new house and they realize there's no couch, and then they discover there's a 12-week lead time. And one of the things I've spoke to you about this before, one of the things I absolutely love about the group is people sharing their success stories. And that's where you mentioned there some people kind of like just to watch and maybe not, they might be nervous asking questions or whatever, but that's where people kind of open up and they're like, this group has been so helpful. Here's everything I learned along the way. Here's, you know, a summary of my story, and it's kind of a positive message to throw out to people as well. That's actually probably the main thing I love about the group, is seeing those stories.
Yeah, and it gives other people hope, and two of my friends have gone through it recently, and one of them posted their story recently, and it was just really nice to see her story. She's used, I think, 2 or 3 of the trusted partners, so she had a great experience with all of. So yeah, it was nice to see her story and, you know, hear her experience with E as well.
Brilliant. I was delighted to hear they're happy with us. Okay, so one of the big challenges I think people face, and for first-time buyers in particular, it's a completely alien world. And they might have heard about their family and so on going through it, but it's when you're kind of thinking about getting mortgage ready, and you know, what do I need to do for a mortgage? What state do my accounts need to be in? How long do I need to be saving? Like, you've hundreds of questions. And Cian, I think that's where you come into the picture. And I know we've spoke before as well, and I know you know everything there is to know about mortgages. And you're great at giving kind of advice to first timers. So we can start very basic. First I'll tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll jump into a few kind of getting started questions on your mortgage journey.
So my name's Cian Carolan, and I work for a company called FinanceOne. So I set up an Instagram page in the middle of COVID back in 2020, with the idea of trying to reach as many people as possible, and it's been an interesting journey so far. But yeah, we help countless first-time buyers every year in FinanceOne, and we take them through their home buying journey from kind of start to finish. And the page allows me to speak to many more people than I'd ever be able to help on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do and why I started the page.
So tell us about the beginning of a journey when somebody contacts you and says, "Hey, Cian, I am thinking about getting a mortgage. I have no idea what I'm doing." How do you kick off that conversation? What's the first piece of advice, and how do you bring them through the journey?
Yeah, so the process really starts with trying to kind of get a grasp on what they're hoping to be able to achieve. So we're assuming that someone is coming to us with a dream in mind, with a goal in mind, but maybe not knowing how best to navigate to get to that end point. So when someone comes to us for the first time, our job is basically firstly to make them as much at ease as possible, because it's a daunting process and it's a really important thing they're about to embark on. And secondly, it's probably to try and impart as much knowledge to them as is possible. We try not to overload them with an end-to-end process and what it's going to look like. What we try to do is tell them what's about to happen in enough time and when they need to know on a need-to-know basis. So without flooding too much too soon, it's trying to flag the key points and the key tasks for them in the process with enough notice to allow them to get their ducks in a row for us. But really, the idea is that they come to us, they entrust us to be able to navigate them through this process from start to finish. And we try and take as much of a lead and control in the process and allow them to take as much of a backseat in the process as is possible.
We're going to jump forward in the journey a little bit to sale agreed. And sale agreed is a piece I know pretty well, because that's when people reach out to Get House Survey. They've gone sale agreed, they're going through their due diligence, trying to figure everything out, make sure it's appropriate to buy, and part of that process is getting a surveyor out. But another piece, and it's a piece nobody can avoid, whether they want to or not, is the legal aspect. And in Ireland, you have to have a solicitor with you as you go through the house buying process. And that's where Suzanne comes in. So Suzanne, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
We're not all that bad. I know people hate solicitors most of the time. We're not. Sometimes we're good. Well, look, I'm a solicitor in Waterford. I worked in Dublin for about 10 years and decided to move home. So I opened up my own firm in Waterford, and it's Parker Law. And you're right, sale agrees is the panic time for clients. Usually you get the phone call at 5 to 5 on a Friday saying, "We've just gone sale agreed. We need a solicitor quick." And they're trying to ring 10 solicitors to get quotes and talk to and see who they like. That's too late. You know, like the best time, solicitors don't mind speaking to you earlier in the process. And if you're looking at new built houses or second hand, they can give you a bit of idea you know, what to look at, you know, when you're out looking at something, have a look at extensions, give something a kick, things like that. But sale agrees is usually when they're in a panic to get something done, because the developer or, you know, the estate agent wants their money in, and they want to know is like the booking deposit they pay. They don't know, for example, it's fully refundable as long as it's going through a, you know, registrar's auctioneer. Things like that are very important to people, because it's the biggest thing you're ever going to buy. You need advice, and you need someone to reassure you, look, what you're doing, this step is okay, go ahead and do it, it's fully refundable, it can come back at any time. So so yeah, they can come to a solicitor and sign up with them at any stage of it.
Okay, and yeah, so one of the things I've actually loved about Parker Law so far is on the group. People complain about solicitors all the time, but I think the most commonly recommended solicitor is you, and I've seen you being recommended a bunch of times, and then Chrissy, I know, had reached out to you about a trusted partner program. So there does seem to be this apprehension about solicitors, and people are worried they'll pick the wrong one, or they'll you know, they won't be able to get in touch with their solicitor when it comes to crunch time and when they need them. But what do you guys do differently? Because people seem to there seems to be a lot of empathy coming from you and your firm. So what is it? What does that set you out that makes people kind of have that impression of you?
I think we just treat people how we want to be treated. Like it is a solicitor's office, but at the same time, we're providing a customer service, and we need to treat people with the same. It's such an important thing, and you're entrusting this person to do a very big job for you. You're never going to spend this much money again, and if you do, then you need a solicitor probably again. But it's a daunting thing. Like even when I was buying my own house, I was a dreadful client. You know, I was kicking my solicitor hated me because I wanted updates daily and I wanted this, and you know, I was awful, absolutely awful. But I wanted my house yesterday, and I think I went sale agreed the first weekend in September, and I got the keys to my house the second weekend in December. There were so many title issues and there was planning issues, and I didn't care. I just told my solicitor, just do it, you know. So I think a solicitor is the worst client you can ever have, because they know what you should be doing, and they're telling you not to bother doing it. Just get me my house, get me my mortgage quick.
Yeah.
I know my fears, and I know what I was worried about. Like I was mortgage because I was trying to convince a bank to let me buy a house in Washford when I was based in Dublin, and my job was in Dublin. They knew exactly what I was going to do, you know. And there were different things that I had a great mortgage broker who was advising me what to do, how to do this, and how to show the bank to get myself mortgage ready, because I didn't know either. Even though this was something you do every day and you talk to clients about, it's still, when it's yourself, you know, all reason goes out the window.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I've noticed as well. When you are when you're you know, we all own businesses, and it's at a particular point in the house buying journey that we interact with customers. And one of the things I noticed is, especially when you're busy, you can just hone in on your small piece of the journey of when you're interacting with customers. And it is hard to step out and think about their full journey and everything they're going through and everything they went through before they got to you and what they're going to go through after. And I think that's another nice thing about the group, is that you see these questions coming in and it kind of reminds you, like, oh, this person is literally starting out, and they're where I was 3 years ago, or whatever it is. Okay, we're going to jump forward a bit to the end, close to the end of the house buying journey, let's say, not quite the end yet. And the whole issue of mortgage protection, life insurance, and the other kinds of policies that people can consider and think about as they're getting close to a mortgage. And we've got Nick with us today. So Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Lion?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nick, the founder of Lion.ie. We're an online life insurance broker specializing in mortgage protection for first-time buyers and income protection for first-time buyers. It's strange that you've left me till the end, whereas I think mortgage protection should be the first thing you look at, because it's the one thing that trips people up. They get their solicitor in place, they get their funds in place to get mortgage ready. Then they apply for the mortgage protection and they realize they've got an outstanding referral in 3 months' time, and it just puts the kibosh and everything. So it's, as Suzanne said, people get in touch with her at the sale agreed stage. People get in touch with me when they're closing next Thursday. and it's utter panic stations, devastation. It's heartbreaking. So really, when you're 12 months from getting a mortgage, 6 months before getting a mortgage, talk to me, talk to somebody, get your mortgage protection in place, at least run it by a broker. If you've no health issues, you're fine, but you'd be surprising how many health issues you don't know you have until you start answering the health questions on a mortgage protection application, because they ask you everything.
Yeah, and I gave this example a couple of years ago when you were on the podcast last time, and when we went through the process, my wife Emma, she had a referral to a hospital, and it was for, sorry, I can't remember, it was for like carpal tunnel syndrome on her wrist. So it was a very simple operation. There's no complexities associated with, there's nothing. But once they seen that there was a referral there waiting, it delayed the entire process by a couple of weeks until we got doctor's letters and everything. And that was completely unexpected for us.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, especially if you're on the public waiting list, you're waiting months, and then you try and go private. Say it's a colonoscopy. You're looking at 6 weeks at least to go private, if not 6 months. It's as I said, it's devastating because they've done all the hard work. They've finally got a house in this horrible market we're in, and then to be let down with the mortgage protection is just it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I think one of the things I like to try to do, because it's very easy to get kind of stressed out about the process, and you can hate the banks, and you can hate your estate agents, and we know estate agents on the call, so we can say whatever we like about it. But you can hate on the estate agents and the whole lot. But one of the things I always try to do is just, okay, flip the switch and think, right, if I was in the bank's shoes, like, why are they asking me these questions? And ultimately, and it's the same reason banks sometimes ask for a survey to be done, is they want to make sure, okay, they're lending you a huge amount of money. That's their business. They have to make, their business is lending you money and making interest on that, and that's how they survive. That's how they pay their employees. That's how they pay their bonuses, the whole lot. And they want to make sure that a couple of things, they're lending you money for an appropriate property, but also that you're not a risk to them, and that you can have your proper insurance in place, so that if the unfortunate happens, they're covered and they won't miss out. So it's like we've seen similar things where the bank just, there's something weird on the survey, and they're like, oh, hang on, you need further investigation on that. And for the house, it could be a structural engineer coming out, or whatever, or somebody to inspect the roof, do a more thorough examination of the roof to make sure it's not going to fall down. But they're doing the same for you as a person as well. You want to make sure you're fit and healthy, and that they're going to be able to rely on you as much as reasonably possible to repay the mortgage.
And the insurers kind of get a bad name as well. It's like, oh, they're being really strict, but the insurers are led by the medical professionals. So if your consultant deems you need an investigation, the insurance company is just going to go, okay, it's going to be prudent to wait. If your consultant needs to see it, we need to see it. So it's not really insurer's fault. If you've got a clean history, you'll get insurance. But if there are any pending investigations, it will be postponed until they take place.
Yeah. And I'm going to stay with you, Nick, for a second before I jump back, because it's something that, and you mentioned people leave it late in the process to contact you. And if anybody is going through that, I definitely recommend you listen back to Nick's episode. But if somebody is, trying to get their insurance in place to get over the line, and they do run into problems, what is it that you guys can do to step in and try to help them? And I know in some rare cases there's exemptions that can happen from the bank, but what is it you guys can do to step in and help them when there's like a serious medical condition?
We deal with 5 insurance companies, and they all have slightly different underwriting criteria for each health condition. So even though you may have hit a wall with Irish Life, Aviva may look more favorably on you, or Royal London may look at that condition more favorably. We specialize in helping people with medical conditions, so we pretty much know quite quickly where to go with a certain case, and we know how to present it. We deal with the senior underwriters at the companies, so if there's a chance to cover it, we'll get you covered.
Okay, and I think that's, you mentioned that last time as well, you deal with a lot of insurance companies, so you can kind of play the field, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. We're a broker. Exactly. Yeah. We work on your behalf to try and get the best deal for you.
Okay, and I'm going to go back to the sale agreed step, and Suzanne, I'm really interested to hear how you think about how I describe the process, because in Ireland, sale agreed there's no legal status of sale agreed. It's just okay, we're sale agreed now. There's no kind of protection for the buyer or the seller in that case. And how I describe it to our customers is, right, this is the stages for you to do your due diligence, and from our side, for surveying, we're making, okay, this is a property you're thinking about spending a lot of money on. We're going to make sure, give you a professional opinion on, whether it's suitable to buy. Is it going to fall down? Is the roof okay? Are the walls okay? What's the general condition? Everything from the door handles up to the structure. But the other piece of that, and you covered some of it earlier on, but the other piece of that is the solicitor side. And how I describe it is that you guys are doing the due diligence on the legal aspect of the property to make sure it's legally sound. Tell us a little bit about, what are you guys checking out? What are you guys checking out behind the scenes for the buyer to make sure that the house is as legally sound?
Well, look, sale agreed is more of a gentleman's agreement type of thing. It gives people, it takes the property off the market in exchange for the purchaser going ahead and doing our side of things is called the investigation of title. So that's exactly what we do. And when contracts come out, sometimes the contracts come out in a couple of days, sometimes they come out in 3 months. Every case is different. And some people ask, that's the first kind of thing they ask, when am I going to get my contracts? And the truth is, you don't know. It depends on if title deeds are held with another bank. It depends on how ready the purchaser or the vendor is too. So you can't really give advice about how long something's going to take until you actually get the contracts in. So the first, same as me, when can I get my house? When do I get my keys? You don't know. When the contract comes in, it says on the closing date section whether it's dependent on something else. And it can be dependent on somebody buying on. It could be dependent on, there's a grant of probate needed, for example. It could be dependent on a lot of things. But our investigation, we look at contracts, we look at planning, we look at all the documentation you need. So you want to make sure you buy a house the same day as you can sell it. So, and what I always tell clients is, I don't know what's going on the ground. I can look at the paper, and the paperwork might be beautiful. It might tell me the house was built in 1971 and this is the most beautiful house ever, and the planning is perfect, but there could be a hole in the roof. I don't know that because it's not in the paper. So that's why the surveyor is so important to me, that they have to go out and do this job, because I can look at the paper and there could be stated, and I could get a declaration saying there's been no extensions, no planning, nothing done to the property since it was originally built. This paperwork is perfect. And there could be a 20-foot extension out the back. And something like that, we need to make sure we get the paperwork for, because otherwise, when they're trying to sell it in 10, 20 years' time, they could be left with a big bill in auction, or they could be left with property that's not compliant, and we could have problems with the bank. So say, for example, in my case, I bought this house and there was a big shed built out the back with no planning permission, and there was another shed beside it with no planning permission. So I went to the bank and did a qualification on title for them. And every bank will make a judgment call about what's happening and if there's problems like that. And every house could have a different problem. So say my house is in the middle of nowhere, a one-off build, this would have different problems than a house in a housing estate. So problems, well, you've got to make sure there's rights away, you've got to make sure there's septic tanks, things like that you're kind of looking at when you're doing your investigation. So in my case, I went to the bank and told them I needed this qualification because there was problems. They came back with, yes, you can go ahead, but we're going to give you some criteria there that you need to do within a certain time. And in my case, I had to make sure they wanted me to get retention permission or else get exemptions. I randomly found some old legislation from, 1800s about using a shed for greyhounds. So I was okay. I didn't have to get the retention permission. I didn't have to pay a fortune. But as you can see, I was a pain for my solicitor, because I still wanted, like, my solicitor said to me, are you sure you want to buy this house? There's going to be some issues later, and that's their job. Sometimes I have had to say to clients, if it's a receiver sale or something like that, look, this is not good title. I need you to walk away. The worst thing you want to be told, but that's why you have a solicitor, to tell you the horrible things. And if they decide to go ahead, you try and do as much as you can for them. But at the same time, you're acting for the client. You're also acting for the bank. And you need to make sure the bank is getting good title too. So this is one thing that clients kind of sometimes, it's their house, but you need to get permission from the bank if you're getting a mortgage on it, because they want to know that they can sell it.
Sorry, something that comes up in the group a lot is that there should be something legally binding at the sale agreed stage, to protect the buyer. Do you think that's something that should be done?
That froze a little bit on me there, Chrissy, but I think what you're saying, if you're legally binding at the sale agreed stage, you could be bound to buy something that you can't buy if you can't get a mortgage on it. You
Yeah.
could be bound, you know, if there's bad title, if there's issues. The sale agreed stage is specifically to give people the opportunity.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's just a question that comes up a lot in the group, because I know in Scotland.
Sorry, I got kicked out of everything there. It is,
oh, no.
and I think it's because the laws in Ireland are quite different. Like, we still have old legislation that, you know, we, like, our planning law started in 1964. Any houses before then are fine, but there's no kind of, it still has to, like, I know they have, if something was built 7 years ago, you're fine, and but it's still not planning compliant. So imagine going sale agreed on a house that was absolutely beautiful, and then you found it had no planning permission whatsoever, and you'd never be able to sell it again.
I suppose this comes in.
Yeah.
This is another thing that comes in, and Noel, maybe you can answer this. Sorry for going off topic. We'll go back on track in a second. But I know in other countries you have to be upfront about problems with a house, and I think that, like, the seller has to provide a survey or something like a survey to the buyer straight up, but you don't have to do that here. Would that kind of like solve the problem that Suzanne is talking about there?
Yeah, that's one of the more unfortunate sides we see. No, sorry, start by saying in the vast majority of cases, there's no serious structural issues with the property. I know people are always nervous about getting their survey done and the whole lot, and they're really anxious to read it to see if there's any big issues that throw them off. 80–90% of the time, there's only small issues that you wouldn't really worry too much about. But there is that side we see as well, and some of our surveyors, probably the most serious case was up in oh god, I can't remember, Mayo or Donegal, I can't remember where the property was, but it was one of the pyrite estates, and the homeowner, it turned out, happened to be a builder, and he intentionally covered up pyrite damage. Now we all read about the pyrite estates. I couldn't possibly imagine being in that situation. It's just, it must be the most insanely stressful thing you can go through with your property, and I know it's caused a huge amount of problems for people and families. But in this case, the homeowner had decided, okay, I'm not going to wait for a remediation scheme or get a cert or whatever. He tried to cover up pyrite damage on the side of the house, and he done whatever he done to try to make it look like the house was perfect. The surveyor actually spotted there was a few other houses in the estate that had pyrite damage visible, and he had been to that estate before, coincidentally, and he knew that there was an issue. And then he picked up on one small little detail. I think it could have been the door frames were kind of slightly off jar. So even though you'd fixed the damage on the outside, the door frames were slightly off jar, and he recommended a further investigation by a structural engineer, and then that turned up that there was damage covered up but not properly remediated. So there is situations like that do happen, and they can be turned up, and and other buyers may not even be aware of issues. There might be an issue with the roof, and you live in a house for 30–40 years. Like, how often do you get up and check the roof yourself? You may not know that there's a serious issue and the roof is about to collapse in on itself. So there is situations where the buyers are aware of things and they cover it up. I have to say, it's very, very rare though. But at the same time, it's something people are worried about. And you are right, in other countries, I think it is Scotland, you have to upfront before, when you're selling a property. So in Ireland, you have to get a BER cert, and that's kind of the only real step you have to take. In Scotland, I think it is, you have to have a survey done by an independent surveyor, and then the surveyor, they have to be registered and the whole lot, and they basically sign off. And we've done this independently. We're not linked with the buyer in any way. And you have to present that as a new buyer pack. I don't know if it's in every place in Scotland, but there's definitely some places up there that you have to present a buyer pack to people who are buying. And that is one step you can take to be, upfront. We've done our due diligence. We're selling your property that, to the best of our knowledge, isn't going to fall down. But yeah, in Ireland, there's nothing like that, and it's especially when people are buying older properties. It's one of the things they're more worried about. Is, look, if I buy this, it falls down, it's mine. There's nothing I can do about it. There's no comeback on a second-hand property. And it is one of the things that people are concerned about. But the same as some of the legal aspects that Suzanne mentioned there, there's nothing you can do about it. If you miss something and, you know, there's a crack in the wall that turns out to be a serious issue and the house collapses 5 years after you buy it, there's no comeback. Or even if you spot an issue a week after moving in, and you go back, there's nothing to come back. It's now you've bought it as it is. So yeah, it is something that we see a lot as well, and it is definitely the apprehension we see from our customers. But all we can do is kind of, you know, assure them, okay, you've taken the right steps, you're speaking to a surveyor, and you know, the surveyor is going to go out, and the surveyors are. I've been on a few surveys with our surveyors, and it blows my mind the things they look at. Like, you know, they know the part of the wall to go to check for something, and I'm looking at a wall, all I see is a wall, but they'll know, nope, this is the piece I need to check in, this is the problem area for damp or whatever, and they go around their meter. They've seen thousands and thousands of houses, so they're experts, and that's what you're paying for, and you get that reassurance on top. Okay, I've hired an expert to review this property. They haven't been able to spot any serious issues, and so, you know, it gives you that confidence to move on. But yeah, it is something, and I think we all know how financially stressful it is to buy a property. And, you know, when you're close to getting over the line and you see, okay, oh, it's €500-600 for a survey, and that's going to take me, you know, a week to turn around or whatever. It's very easy to say, oh, the house looked fine though. You know, I don't think I need a surveyor, and it's very easy to say, no, I'm happy to press on. You tell your solicitor, no, I'm happy with it. I'm fine. My husband built a house 50 years ago and he said it's okay. Or the dads as well. Dads are another one. Your dad comes out and views the house with you and he says, no, he's knocked the walls and he knows it's fine. It's very easy to say, okay, I don't want to spend the €500 or €600 and I just want to, you know, move things along as quickly as I can. But yeah, it's the peace of mind. I think that's part of our big selling point, and it's why we explain that a survey is so important when you're buying a house. Yeah, I've talked too much about myself. I'm terrible host. I'm gonna throw it back to Cian, and Cian, I'm gonna ask you one of the more complex questions here, because, and Chrissy, you'll see this as well when people are getting close to closing time, and you know, they're maybe they have their closing dates lined up and everything seems to be in place and moving towards that closing date, and they're getting excited. And one of the questions they always ask is, when can I start spending money? When can I take out a loan? When can I borrow 50,000 to put that extension on? What do you tell your customers, Cian, when they throw that question at you?
My first response is always, if you can just wait a little bit longer and not upset the apple cart. That's always the easiest thing, but of course there are things that need to be paid for, like floors and furniture, in advance of buying the house or in advance of drawing the mortgage down. So there's always some things that are unavoidable, and you kind of have to spend in advance. So I typically say to people, try and sustain your repayment ability. So if that's through savings, put your savings into the account. If there are any relevant withdrawals that need to happen to pay for deposits on furniture or appliances or whatever might be the case, keep a receipt for them, so that if you're asked why did that money leave the account, you can substantiate that with a relevant spend receipt. But if it's a case that you're going off to Ibiza for a week and you need to pay for flights and a hotel, that can't happen. I always say to people, when you have this mortgage, you have to pay the mortgage whether you're going to Ibiza or not. So you need to try and make everything work. But if you can hold out until the end of the process, if you can't, take it from savings and keep a receipt for it. But don't go taking out loans until the mortgage is drawn down. And if you can avoid taking out loans at all, even after the mortgage, try, because I suppose people probably lose sight of the fact that they're about to take on the biggest loan they're likely ever to take on. So why don't you compound that with another loan straight away? See how you settle into life paying a mortgage. See how you settle into life living in your new house. And if you can do things from savings, if you have savings left over, that's always preferable. But at the very least wait to take another loan out until after the mortgage is funded.
Just be sensible. And I always like to tell a story. My aunties and uncles, when they tell me when they bought a house, the stories are always similar. It's always, we were sitting on the floor for 4 months until we could we could afford to buy a couch. And what I say to my friends and family who are going through the process as well is like, just get into your house, sit on a box if you need for the first few weeks, or get takeaways for the first week, whatever, if you need to get a new cooker in. But just get into the house first. Don't worry about everything else. You don't need the house perfectly furnished and ready to go the day you move in.
Yeah, it's just that perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. I know, Chrissy, you moved into your house straight away the day you got it, didn't you?
No, we had one of those surveys that came up and alarmed the bank, so that took another few months after the year-long sale. We had to get it renovated fully. There was a leak from the attic. Someone has grown weed up there.
Oh.
And they were yeah.
Yeah, you had shared that story with me before, and I absolutely love that, because in your case, not the fact you had a leak in the house and it took you stress to get through, but in your case, you hone in the house. You're like, okay, this one's within our budget. This one is in the area we want. It's not ideal. There's a lot of work needs to be done with it, and I know you have to go through and get all different kinds of reports and quotes and prices. And then you guys got the house, and you've done the work that needed to be done. It took a while, but now you've a beautiful home, and I know you've shared some of the stories of your back garden, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
And you guys are making that a home, and you have done over the last few years.
Yeah. No, it was a long process, but it was definitely worth it in the end. And like Nick said earlier, Andrew has asthma, and I had pleurisy once when I had the flu, and those things raised alarm, and that's why I got in touch with Nick, and he was really helpful at the time. And I'm always promoting Nick, he's great. But I wish I knew the three of you back then to help in the process, because I know the three of you would have made it so much less stressful.
Yeah, well, sometimes we can. Sometimes we just have to point out stress and say, no, that wall is looking a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
You don't want to buy that. You don't want to buy that house. Okay, and then Nick, sorry, one of the questions that does pop up over and over again, and when people ask me, I always say, look, I send them the link for the episode we done, because I know you went into a huge amount of detail on it there. But when you're buying a house and you're budgeting is a big concern, and there's you go to some brokers and there's like 10 different kinds of protection you can get in the whole lot. What's the bare minimum you need to get over the line for a mortgage? So what is it you need your cover for, that you can say to the bank, look, I'm ready to go?
Yeah, basically all you need is mortgage protection, which is life insurance, where the sum insured or the amount of cover reduces over time in line with the balance of your mortgage. That's it. It's basic mortgage protection. It's cheap, it's cheerful. The bank gets ownership of it. So yeah, don't go overboard on it. Don't add serious illness cover to it. That's basically all you need. Then the optional ones are life insurance, important if you have kids, income protection, which is kind of our house view, is everybody should have it if you consider it, and then serious illness cover if you can afford it. But really, we'll push mortgage protection because it's mandatory, and income protection because, look, if you don't have an income, you can't pay your mortgage. So it's so important.
Yeah, I know after our episode, I actually went back to check cover we got, because all I remembered at the time was, I need to get this sale over the line. I will sign whatever. Is this being recommended to me? Great, I'll sign this and take this. And it turns out we actually got good advice. We got the mortgage protection, obviously, and then we got enough cover because we had kids. As you said, we got enough cover then as well, if anything unfortunately happened to me or Emma, to clear the mortgage and for an extra bit of money to cover us. So that's what we got in the end. But yeah, and it's a story I always tell people as well. I was so stressed getting over the line that you could have put anything in front of me and I'd have just signed it. So it kind of is important just to take a step back and think, okay, what do I need, and then what's suitable, what's a requirement, what do I have to do, and then what's in my circumstances, where you got family, kids, whatever, maybe you're a sole income earner and you need to think about income protection, whatever, what's sensible for me as well in my situation.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, so sorry, just to put in there, like if you are panicking under duress at the banks, you can always shop around. You're not locked into like a 30-year mortgage protection policy. You can cancel at any time without penalty. So yeah, like use the bank to close if needs be, and then in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, when you have time, just speak to a broker and get proper advice.
That's actually what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, for anyone listening, can they get in touch with you now after, signing up with the bank?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Change. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're coming close to time. So I want to give Chrissy a chance just to wrap up and tell us about the group, because the reason we're all here, and I mentioned it in the intro, is we're the trusted partners on the First Time Buyers Ireland Facebook group. So Chrissy, why don't you tell us a bit about that program, why you decided these companies were trusted partners and that you're willing to associate with them and recommend them to people.
Yes, so first I want to thank all four of you, because you all provide such an amazing service, and that's why I got in touch with each of you. I would never recommend anyone to the members. I think you all know that, I'm not scared of saying no to someone, or if they don't have my members' best interest at heart, I wouldn't have you on board. But first for Noel, because you provide such amazing podcasts and information for people. The people that have used you love your service. They say you're very friendly. So I just want to thank you for everything you do. Cian, your page, I remember talking to you back I think it was around when you first started it, and you were so happy to answer questions I came to you with. Even though you weren't a member of the group, I wouldn't let you in for a while. But you were really happy to help me and send voice notes, and I asked you so many questions. You were probably sick of me. But thank you for your page and for giving people free information. And I really hope people come to FinanceOne and use your service. Suzanne, like the members of the group can just speak for me, but like they rave about you. And when I had that first phone call with you, I knew that you were the solicitor I wanted, and I didn't want anyone else. So I'm delighted that you're on board, because I know you'll look after each and every member that comes to you from the group. Nick, I've promoted your service from the start. You've helped me. You helped one of my friends recently, Alex. You probably remember that he went with you the other day. I think you came back to him. He has a health issue, and you managed to get him protection, which he was delighted about. You help so many people with what you do. I'm sure it's a hard job having to turn people down when you can't provide the protection. But your blogs as well. Everyone raves about your blogs. They're very funny. Keep the blogs, because they're amazing. So yeah, I've kind of outlined there why I picked each of you. I know you'll provide the members with an excellent service. And one of the most common questions is, can anyone recommend a solicitor, a broker, insurance provider, a surveyor? So I think having 4 trusted partners who I and members of the group have recommended makes it easier for people to go with someone that's trusted by loads of people. And I think all of you and my members know I wouldn't just pick someone that I had no experience with. Like, I've talked to all of you for a long time.
Yeah, and that's that. And I mention all the time about it's almost like I'm addicted to the group, because that's one of the things that really shines through is people are there. They're just genuinely need help, and if I obviously any survey related questions I try to jump in and help with, but if there's something else, maybe I went through it myself or whatever, I try to jump in, because I'm like, oh, this person, I know exactly what they're going through. I can either tell them my experience or point them in the right direction. And it's just such a nice community, being able to see people help each other. And then, as I said earlier, on the success stories, I think they help drive a lot of people over the line when you're, everything seems to be going wrong on your own journey and you just can't see that end line, and then you'd see these people, and maybe it's somebody that's gone through the exact same thing as you, and they share their story and some of their advice. It's just such a nice place to go, and I actually love seeing those success stories. I think you have them tagged as.
Yeah, and I want to thank the members as well, because it wouldn't be the group if they didn't come back and stay on to help other people. There was another post the other day, someone posted saying that they were on the way to pick up their keys, which I thought was really nice. We were high up on the list of people that they wanted to tell that they were on the way to get their keys. They hadn't even got them yet, and I thought that was such a lovely post. And then she posted the photo again underneath that thread of her putting the keys in the door, which I that was really nice. But the members obviously make it what it is, and it's hard to keep the community the way it is as it grows, and it's a big focus of mine to keep it like that. Me and Nick have talked about it before, how sometimes it can dip a little bit, and it's my main focus to keep it that way, because otherwise I wouldn't enjoy running it. So keeping that community spirit is really important to me.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm going to wrap up the same way I wrap up every single episode. I'll take a little bit longer this time because we've 4 guests, but I'm going to throw it over to, well, three of you, Nick, Cian, and Suzanne. We'll start with Nick. If you can give one piece of advice, you have 30 seconds to give somebody your key piece of advice on their house buying journey to make it a bit less stressful for themselves. What's that advice?
Start your mortgage protection early. Inquire early, and just make sure you have no outstanding investigations, referrals on your medical record. If you do, you simply won't get cover. Okay, so start early, and that's you know, I feel like I slipped there, but you said that to me last time on our podcast, and I still don't remember that piece. You know, speak to a mortgage broker early in the process, yes. But the life cover as well, especially if you have any, as you said, any outstanding investigations or yeah. And just to jump in, people kind of are worried that they'll have to start paying premium immediately, but you don't. You can have your cover accepted, ready, waiting to go. You won't pay for it until you start your mortgage, until you draw down the mortgage. But at least it's ready. It's one less thing to worry about as you get closer to closing. Cian, your top piece of advice.
My advice will always be, if you can have an expert guide you through any facet of the process, always have an expert. Don't cut costs to save money here and there on important things. So have a good surveyor, pay good money for a good solicitor. That doesn't mean pay top dollar, but pay good money for a really good solicitor, and have a broker guide you through the process. And if someone who's coming to the tail end of the process of both selling and buying a house, I'm after seeing firsthand the value of having someone guide you through the process who knows what they're doing on the purchase side, and seeing the carnage that can happen for those that are trying to navigate the process themselves direct and don't really know what they're doing, don't know what's coming next, and the kind of knock-on impacts that can have. So without a shadow of doubt, the more experts you can have at each important stage in the process, the better, because you'll have a much less stress-free, or much more stress-free process. You know, that's always my top advice. More experts, the better.
Suzanne, same question.
I completely kind of agree with Cian and Nick. Give yourself time. Like, one of the most stressful parts of it is delays happen, and they're inevitable, waiting for contracts, I think just tell people to stay calm. It's going to come, things will happen. But as well as that, don't, if you're given a closing date, give yourself a week around, just because something will happen, money won't show up, there'll be a delay somewhere, and don't be disappointed. If you've got any worries, talk to someone, because all of us here have been through this 100 times. We're calm. Because we're kind of a step back from it. We can reassure people. We can give them options. We can think outside the box. We know what to do. A client might be and you know, you could get very bogged down on one thing that you're so terrified about. So it's really get advice on it. Talk to people. Stay calm and expect a delay.
It's expected delays. It's just a really
it is, and
really
it's heartbreaking.
Story. Yeah, we had, I remember telling a friend of ours leading up to our closing date, we had absolutely everything. By the time we got to that week and we'd gone through and we got the mortgage protection in place, we'd everything lined up. And we had a closing date, and I was so confident. I was like, no, this is the Thursday. We're going to have the keys. And we didn't, we got them on the Friday. So we missed the last closing date by one day, but yeah. Okay, so I am going to have everybody's contact details in the show notes. So if you need help in any of these areas, with your mortgage protection, you're still trying to find a solicitor to talk to, you're only starting out, and you want to speak to a broker, or if you're just looking for other people you can kind of get advice from, and you're looking for a group you can join on Facebook, I'm going to have all the links in the show notes. You can go click through to them, follow on Instagram or Facebook, wherever. And then these are one of the most lovely people you can interact with in your house buying journey. So if you do need any of these people, reach out to them. The links will all be there, and I wouldn't have them on the show if I didn't think that they would give you be truly able to help you and help you on your journey. So Chrissy, Nick, Cian, and Suzanne, thank you very much, and I hope everybody has a good day.
I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Every time I talk to anybody from this group, I always end up learning something, so it was great to get them all together for the podcast. If you want to reach out to Cian about applying for a mortgage, Suzanne if you're looking for a solicitor, or Nick if you want to get your mortgage protection ready to go, and remember, do that sooner rather than leaving it to the last minute, I've all their contact details in the show notes. Also, if you haven't yet, make sure you join the First Time Buyers Ireland Facebook group, or follow them on Instagram. Even if you don't ask any questions yourself, you're still going to learn a bunch just by reading what others are going through. I've also left a link to that group in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us. If you have any questions you'd like us to include in a future episode, email podcast@gethousesurvey.ie. If you found this episode useful, it would be great if you left us a review, or it would be even better if you told a friend or family member who are on the house buying journey about the podcast so that they can have a listen too. That's it for now, and until next time, have a great day.